$2.5 million for DJ Durkin. Well deserved or overpaid? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for giving us a listen today. Joining me, as he always does, is my good friend Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Chris, I know it's baseball season and you're on the move, but we're talking football today. We're talking DJ Durkin's new contract. Auburn has made him the second highest paid assistant in the country, $2.5 million behind only Penn State's Jim Knowles, who has a $3.1 million contract with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Look, is this a good move by Auburn? By all intents and purposes, he was the strength. His unit was the strength of this team last year.
Yeah, Mike, that's a lot of money. I remember the days where coaches were making 2.5 and 3.1 million, and now we've got coordinators, calling for those kind of salaries. But it's worth it. I mean, I think that when you look at, you mentioned, Mike, the strength of what Auburn was last year. And I mentioned this when Auburn hired DJ Durkin, that, you can say about him whatever you want, the person and maybe some of the history, whatever. But the thing you can't deny is he's one hell of a football coach. And you saw that last year. Auburn giving up just under 330 yards per game to their opponents. I mean, it was the thing that really gave Auburn a chance to get to a bowl game and sort of held it together when things were going awry on the offensive side. I mean, that's the thing too, Mike. You think about how good the defense was when the offense wasn't really holding up their end of the bargain. And I think it really just goes to show the impact that Durkin had. So I know you and I talked about it a little bit. Maybe it's, a chess, not checkers move. And there's some forward thinking here with, wanting to keep him on staff at all costs, maybe moving forward in the future in case maybe it's a coach in waiting type of situation, a head coach type in waiting that maybe Durkin could slide in if big if things were to go sideways. But I mean, listen, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, I think, and yeah, that's what the going rate is. So I think it's worth every penny, and I think it says a lot. Auburn obviously making an investment in their guy.
$2.5 million is a lot of money for an assistant. I don't care what the program is, but also I think he does. I mean, he deserved it. He did a really, really good job with a young defense last year. He played a lot of freshmen. As a matter of fact, they noted how many freshmen he played, and it was remarkable that they were able to produce those types of results with as many freshmen as they played. But Chris, looking forward to what the landscape of college coaching looks like now, continuity of staff is so important to recruiting. And when you're telling a kid in the recruiting process, this is what we're going to look like, here's what our plan is, and here's where you fit into it, looking at the guys that head those units and saying, this guy's going to be here. Because we know now Ohio State was making a run at DJ Durkin. Mm-hmm. And Auburn, to some extent, maybe had to pay to secure his commitment. And let's give the agents credit. They were doing work here. DJ Durkin's agent was probably working and saying, listen, the defending national champs are after my guy. So if you guys want to keep him here on this not bowl game making team, you got to pay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, too, again, you just look at where does he rank amongst the best defensive coordinators, Mike, in the SEC. And I think he's one of the very best. I mean, obviously, you talk about guys like Glenn Schumann. And, I mean, I think DJ Durkin's in that first couple of names you would list off. So I think, it makes sense for an elite-level defensive coordinator in the SEC. And like you mentioned, he earned it. That's the thing. It's not just being given. He earned it based off what they did on the field. They were really, really impressive from start to finish. Again, like we mentioned, they were the thing that week after week you could sort of depend on with Auburn, that you knew was going to show up. You didn't know what the offense was going to do, but you knew defensively they were going to give them a chance. Even to the final game, Mike, you and I have talked that, in that game against Alabama, I mean, the defense did everything it could to set up the offense, and it was because of missed opportunities on the other side that you didn't have a chance to pull the upset. So, yeah, it's well-deserved by Durkin, and I would expect the defense to only continue to get better.
Yeah, look, top 25 by the numbers at the end of the regular season, he had a top 25 defense. I think that if you're Auburn, well, given all the problems that you've had offensively, he was your shining star. As a matter of fact, he might have been the best assistant in the country last year. You're just not going to get that credit on a team that's sub 500, Chris. You know what I mean? Like, to some extent, you can't escape the results in the win-loss column if you're DJ Durkin, although you did enough for Auburn to win most games. As a matter of fact, I want to say the stat I looked at said if Auburn could have managed 28 points per game in Power 5 play, they only lose to Georgia.
Which is not asking for a lot. It's not asking for the world or anything,
Not in today's college football.
Not in today's college football.
Yeah. 28 points a game is not a lot of scoring. A touchdown per quarter, I think, is a reasonable expectation in most games against most opponents that you're playing, because it's become harder to play defense, Chris. The rules are so offense friendly. You can't touch guys. Everything's a hold. It's tough. It's tough to play defense, and he fielded a top 25 squad with what he had in today's game, and all they had to do was score 28 points a game, and they're winners plus time of possession. Mm-hmm. If they win time of possession, his unit is even fresher, and they're probably even producing more results because they're on the field less.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that defense gave Auburn every shot to win, more than they did, right? To your point, you scored 28 points per game. That's a really impressive stat. I didn't know that either. So, I mean, again, I think you continue to invest in your guy. You build around him. You've given him the resources to go out in the portal, in recruiting, continue to add talent. If he was able to do that, like you mentioned with those youngsters, again, the defense should make a jump. And, now it's up to the other side of the ball to hold up there into the bargain and improve from last year to this year. That's obviously the big question with the Tigers.
Yeah, big question. But the other question that we have is this money? Is there some strategy to what Auburn's doing here in paying him this much money? I.e., is he coaching waiting? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our friends at the Rogue Shop. Chris, visit rogueshop.com and use code Rapport to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life. Auburn's offense. If it bothers you, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Our friends at the Rogue Shop, longtime sponsors of the War Rapport. Again, visit them at rogueshop.com and use code Rapport to get 15% off. Also, this segment is brought to you by our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Spring is coming quickly. And with it comes spring football, which means spring tailgating, which means you should be out there grilling with your friends and family on a Golden's Cast Iron grill. My dad got the Kamado grill for Father's Day a couple of years ago. We've been making memories around it ever since. GoldensCastIron.com, helping you make memories with your friends and families this off season. Let's jump back in here. Is there a strategy here? It's no secret that these first 2 years did not go as planned for Hugh Freeze. I.e., should he be on the hot seat for year 3? Has he earned a hot seat? Now, I want to go back to something that Hugh Freeze said to me directly after Auburn won the SEC tournament, Chris, in Nashville on the basketball court. I walked up to him. I said, Coach, when can fans expect your next SEC championship? He said, I need 2 more recruiting cycles. Remember, this is last spring. The portal is not the way to build a consistent winner. You got to build this thing from high school, Mike. Looked me right in my eye and said this. So that was 2024. So that's this recruiting cycle and the next one. And then, bam, Hugh Freeze is saying, I should have a squad competing for an SEC championship. Do you think that's reasonable, or should it be now?
I think 2 things can be true at once, Mike. I think it's reasonable, but I think that there should be major improvement in this 2025 season. To a point of, I mean, is it about competing for the SEC championship, or is it about competing to go to the playoff? I think that, would you rather go to the SEC title game, or would you rather go to the playoff? I think most people are going to say go to the playoff at this point. Right. I think the conference title games are, which if you're getting there, you're getting to the playoff. That's the other kind of kicker, unless you're in some weird situation where, you end up being a 3-loss team. Either way, I'm not saying what he's saying is unfair, but you can't be going 5-7 in year 3. You can't be going 6-6 in year 3. I mean, there's got to be some sort of sign of positive progress. So I don't think it's unfair for the Auburn fan base to expect. I mean, heck, last year we were talking about 8 wins was the magic number. I mean, this year it's got to be at least 8. I think probably 9 you'd like to get to. Anything less than 8, and I think we're having some really tough conversations. Did you mention the hot seat? I think it's absolutely fair he's on the hot seat. I think it's with what Auburn has invested and the talent they've brought in. And, yeah, I think last year was inexcusable. And I think the fan base and everyone who supports that program, that they look at it that way, and they should look at it that way. It wasn't excusable. So, you mentioned let's put the tinfoil hat on. The investment in DJ Durkin, could it maybe be a head coach in waiting thing? I don't know. Is that the guy Auburn would want? I mean, I don't really know.
Who are you going to go get, though, Chris?
But fair enough, because it's a very difficult job. It's a very, very tough job. And a guy like Durkin, it would be a risk because he hasn't, unless I am forgetting, he has not been a head coach before, I don't believe. So, you're asking a guy who's never been. It's different, right? Might be in from the DC, as good of a defensive mind as he is, being in that seat that Hugh Freeze is in. It's just different. So there's no guarantees, but there's really no guarantees with anybody. But no, listen, back to the point. Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat. He should be on the hot seat.
Yeah.
To his point, winning the SEC championship, I think what he said is fair.
Okay.
But that's not really where the target is in 2025, is it? It's when we get to November, be in the conversation of the college ball playoff. You don't even have to win the SEC title to be in that combo.
That's fair. As a matter of fact, the SEC at one point projected to have as many as 5 teams into the playoff. Those teams just blew it. Ole Miss blew it. Missouri blew it.
Bama blew it.
These teams were in control of their playoff destiny, and they blew it. So if you're Auburn, can you be one of those next 3 beyond the SEC champion and the SEC runner-up? Because we know those 2 are going to make it every single year. I mean, it was almost criminal that the SEC didn't get more teams into this playoff. I'm going to tell you that right now. So if you're Hugh Freeze, you got to be in that conversation. Kind of like, I would say South Carolina had the season that Auburn probably should have had this year.
Yeah.
Closed their season strong. Clearly they got their quarterback of the future. And if you believe all the rumors, they dropped a huge, big old bag to keep Lenore Sellers in the fold after the season that he had. And you've got to be there. Now, do I think South Carolina can sustain that? The answer is no, Chris. I think they're going to be right out of the conversation somehow next year. But I think that spot, that 4th to 5th spot is cyclable in some kind of way. Like, you're just going to see teams move in and out of that conversation in that 4th or 5th spot in the SEC, which should secure you a playoff spot.
Yeah, at least, Mike, when you're winning 8 or 9 games, you feel like your goals are within arm's reach, or you're a guy or 2 away, or you're a kind of minor adjustment away. Or you can at least say, hey, it's hard to win and something happened and we lost a game that we shouldn't have, or we lost to a tough team. And you can at least justify that. But yeah, when you're going 5-7, obviously, or even like a 6-6, you're just light years away from what you're trying to achieve. And I just don't think Hugh Freeze can afford to be light years away again, right? Because at some point, when you're that far away, you're like, we need to make radical change. This isn't about making minor adjustments or hiring this position coach or adding one other player. Like, we need to kind of reinvent the wheel here. And typically when you say something like that, it's starting with the head coach.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. Look, I think that you can't afford to miss another bowl game. Personally, I don't care where that contract is at. If you miss another bowl game, he should be out of here. Hire DJ Durkin, keep it pushing. But, at some point, you can't keep hiring and firing head coaches and then expect for qualified, bona fide candidates to step up for the job. Because believe it or not, these coaching circles are tight. They believe in one another, and they will preach patience no matter what the next guy's situation is, because they know they're one bad year from being on that same hot seat that their peers find themselves on from time to time. It's a brutal industry that demands results. If you're Hugh Freeze, you got to produce them in year 3. Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered, I want to thank you for joining me. As always, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, it's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me. I always look forward to these segments. We're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content, YouTube, podcast as well, and, of course, our website, secunfiltered.com, talking all things football, baseball, and basketball. You can check us out there everywhere I mentioned.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform, TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, worry.